Welcome to our channel. Thank you for watching our stories. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the bell for new videos. It all started with a glitch, a simple error, a technical oversight in a boutique hotel's booking system during an ambitious renovation. One that would have gone unnoticed on any other day. But this mistake, this one tiny miscalculation, set in motion a chain of events that neither of the two guests would ever forget. The hotel, known for its cozy charm and personalized service, was undergoing a massive renovation. New decor, upgraded amenities, a completely reimagined experience. But amidst the buzz of drills and paint fumes, one reservation got duplicated. One room, two names, one key. Check-in time was 3 p.m. She arrived first. An architect in her late 20s, freshly off a stressful design presentation. Her world was all about clean lines, order, minimalism, and silence. She had come for a short break, hoping to escape the static of city noise and the relentless hum of responsibility. She wasn't here for adventure or surprises. She was here to breathe alone. When she opened the door to room 304, she felt relief. It was small, yes, but comfortable. The bed looked like heaven, the little desk in the corner, perfect for journaling or sketching. She placed her suitcase neatly in the closet, unpacked her essentials with surgical precision, and took a deep breath. This room was hers. Now, until it was at 3:38 p.m., the door opened again, and in walked chaos disguised as a man with sunglasses, headphones around his neck, and a backpack that looked like it had survived a storm. A travel blogger. Energetic, talkative. The type who believed that every stranger was just a friend he hadn't met yet. And this stranger was suddenly standing in the middle of her room. They both froze. She, with wide eyes, clutching a glass of water like it was a weapon. He, halfway through a step, staring at her like he had walked into a parallel universe. I think I have the wrong room," he mumbled, patting his jeans for his phone. But no room 304. It was correct. The hotel receptionist confirmed it. And unfortunately, due to the renovation, all other rooms were occupied or under construction. There were no alternatives, no upgrades, to strangers. And a whole week of awkward cohabitation. She protested first, not angrily but firmly. This was not what she signed up for. She needed space, silence, boundaries. He, to his credit, offered to sleep in the bathtub or on the floor, but the hotel wouldn't allow it for liability reasons. The solution? A clear division of the room. Her side, his side. Her shelf, his backpack zone, a pillow wall in the bed. An unspoken rule. Minimal conversation. Maximum distance. That was day one. It felt like a sitcom gone wrong, like the universe had miscast them in the same story. Her routines were disrupted. He played music too loud in the mornings. His toothbrush somehow ended up in her mug. She organized the closet alphabetically. He stuffed socks in drawers like grenades. He opened the curtains at sunrise. She wore an eye mask and hated the light. But here's the thing about proximity: it doesn't just breed annoyance. It exposes humanity. Day two brought the first crack in the ice. He came back soaked from the rain, his umbrella torn, shoes squishing with each step. She was reading by the window. She didn't look up. But as he peeled off his jacket, shivering, she sighed, got up, and handed him a towel. Nothing was said, but everything changed. The next day, noticed she skipped lunch. Without asking, he brought back an extra sandwich from the cafe downstairs and placed it on her side of the table, along with a sticky note that simply read, "In case you forgot to eat again." She stared at the note longer than she stared at the sandwich. That night, the shower broke. They both stood in the bathroom, towels on heads, staring at the gurgling pipe as it made a noise reminiscent of a dying walrus. It should have been frustrating, but instead, they both burst out laughing. Laughter, uncontrolled. Certo. In that moment, something cracked wide open. The absurdity of it, or the booking mistake, the forced cohabitation, the ridiculous shower bound them in a way polite conversation never could. From that night on, the room felt different. Still divided, yes but softer. She started asking questions. Where had he traveled recently? What was his favorite place? He told her stories of lost passports, street food adventures, and sleeping under stars in the desert. In return, he asked her why she never wore color. She laughed and said, "Because it's predictable," he replied. "Maybe you need a little unpredictable." By midweek, the pillow wall had collapsed. Literally, she rolled over in her sleep, knocking the barrier to the floor. He woke up, startled, found her curled toward him in the dark. He didn't move. Neither did she. They stayed that way until morning. There were no confessions, no keys, just silence heavy, loaded with things neither of them were ready to say. But the energy had shifted. The room that once felt too small now felt just right. They began moving in sync without realizing, brushing teeth, swapping books, watching old movies on a shared tablet. She even let him pick the music once, and to her surprise, she liked it. Every evening became a ritual. Dim lights, slow jazz, a bottle of wine between them, and conversations that ran deep into the night. Dreams, regrets, childhood memories. She told him about a home she once designed that was never built. He told her about a letter he wrote to someone he never sent. And somewhere between those nights, something unspoken bloomed. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. As the final day approached, their dynamic changed again. The thought of leaving no longer brought relief. It brought a strange ache. The once shared goal of enduring the week was now the thing they dreaded. And when the hotel called to apologize, again offering free future stays and dinner vouchers, they just nodded, barely listening, because they knew this wasn't about the hotel anymore. It was about what had happened inside room 304. The last night, they didn't talk much. They sat on the bed, side by side, the lamp casting warm shadows on the wall. His hand brushed against hers. She didn't pull away. "I never imagined this," she whispered. "Neither did I," he said. They both laughed, softly. Not because it was funny, but because it felt impossible. And yet, it wasn't. The next morning, she packed slowly, deliberately, folding clothes like memories. He washed her, then reached into his bag and pulled out a small Polaroid picture. It was of room 304th view from the window. He handed it to her. Just in case you forget, he said. She took it, smiled, and didn't say goodbye, because something told her this wasn't the end. Sometimes, the greatest love stories don't start with sparks or perfect timing. They begin with a mistake. A glitch in the plane. A shared room in two hearts, who were never meant to meet, but did anyway. If room 304 had walls that could talk, they would have whispered the truth from the very first night. This wasn't just a booking mistake, it was a collision. Not of luggage or routines or schedules, but of worlds or philosophies. Of two very different people forced into the same square footage with nothing but a bed, a bathroom, and a silent agreement not to murder each other in their sleep. One loved silence. The other filled silence with sound. One believed in lists, schedules, and the serenity of routine. The other in waking up when the sun felt right, eating when hungry, and living with the spontaneity of a backpacker and the chaos of a storm. On paper, they were a disaster waiting to happen. And on the first night, he dropped his backpack on the floor with a thud that shook the lamp. She flinched. She arranged her toothbrush, hairbrush, and night cream in a neat triangle on the sink counter. He watched, amused, and then tossed his entire toiletry bag next to it like it was a grenade. She wanted a shower before bed. He wanted a snack. She dimmed the lights. He turned on the overhead lamp and started editing videos at full brightness. By 11 policial militar, the silence between them wasn't peaceful, it was tense. She lay stiff in bed, earbuds in, eyes shut tight, pretending to sleep. He sat cross-legged in the corner, typing furiously, headphones blasting ambient cafe noise. A pillow wall divided the bed. They'd agreed on it with a single look and a mutual shrug. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't cute. It was a survival tactic. The first skirmish happened at dawn. She woke at 6:30 a.m. sharp. Not because of her alarm, but because he was snoring loudly. She sat up, sleep-deprived and irritable, glaring at the ceiling as if it held answers. She considered poking him. She considered throwing a pillow. Instead, she opted for revenge in the form of passive-aggressive noise. Opening drawers, zipping her suitcase loudly, letting the bathroom door creak open like a haunted house. He stirred, groaned, rolled over. "Morning already," he mumbled. She didn't answer. That afternoon, the second battle began over the thermostat. She liked it cool, crisp, sleep in his sweater, cool. He liked it warm, borderline tropical for the next 24 hours. The thermostat became a battleground. She'd lower it 2 degrees when he went to the bathroom. He'd raise it back up when she left for coffee. It went unnoticed at first. Then it became a pattern. Then it became war. Finally, she snapped. "Are you adjusting the temperature every time I leave the room?" He blinked. "Are you adjusting it when I leave?" Silence. They stared at each other. Then she left. Not a full laugh. A smirk. A reluctant truce. He laughed too. "Maybe we need a treaty," he said. She nodded. "Fine. 22 degrees. That's neutral. Room temperature peace treaty," he declared, holding out his hand. She didn't shake it, but she smiled. On the third day, the clash evolved. No longer open, conflict became a series of passive negotiations. a shared dance of compromise. He turned off his music and used headphones. She allowed a little sunlight through the curtains in the morning. It was progress. Slow, painful, but real. Then came the fourth night. Gaming latch after an impromptu city walking tour. He had implantado. His feet were sore. His energy low. He slumped into the room and froze. She was sitting on the bed, laptop on her knees, watching a documentary with headphones. He looked at her. She looked at him. He pointed, "Is that jazz playing in the background?" She nodded. "Your influence." He smiled, genuinely. "Want to hear about the alley I got lost in today?" She paused the video, took off her headphones. "Sure." That night, something changed again. Not dramatically, not romantically, but perceptibly. They were no longer strangers forced to coexist. They were cohabitants, tentative allies in a shared territory. The next morning, he made her coffee. She didn't drink coffee, but she drank it anyway. "Too strong?" he asked. "Terrible," she said. "But thank you." That afternoon, she returned the favor, brought him back a pastry he mentioned liking. "Don't get used to it," she warned. He did. By the end of day 5, they'd begun asking each other's opinions. "Do you think this shirt is too loud? Is this sentence too formal? Should I keep my videos short? Do you ever regret your career path?" The questions weren't casual. They were glimpses into private thoughts, places people don't normally go with hotel roommates. But they were no longer just hotel roommates. They were becoming something else. One night, around midnight, a loud bang came from the hallway. Someone knocking over a cleaning cart. She jumped. He instinctively reached over, placing his hand on hers. Neither of them moved it. "Just the night staff," he said quietly. She nodded, but didn't pull away. The next day, she offered to show him her sketchbook. He asked if he could film it for a travel story on artists I meet by accident. "Whose?" She said yes, but only if he kept her name out of it. That evening, he set up his camera by the window. She stood beside him, watching the view. They didn't speak. "Tudo house. The golden hour hit, the glass just right. Hichi record." She looked at him. Really looked, and saw someone she'd never have met in any other life. Someone chaotic. Yes, but full of light. He looked at her and saw something he never expected. Stillness. Not the kind that weighs. The kind that anchors. On the 6th night, they had their first real argument. He'd forgotten to set an alarm. She missed the morning meeting because she assumed he would wake her. Voices were raised, words sharper than intended. "You're not my responsibility," "And you're not my friend," she answered. It hurt more than either expected. They didn't speak for the rest of the day. The silence was worse than the noise ever had been. But silence, when shared, reveals what words sometimes can't. Later that night, he left a note on her pillow. "You were right. I don't plan. But if I had, I would have planned to meet you." She found him on the balcony, looking at the moon. "I don't hate your music," she said. He smiled. "I don't hate your routines," he replied. They sat in silence again. Only this Jimmy. It was comfortable. Their final night was quiet. No movies, no coffee, just presence. She packed slowly. He didn't. They'd come into the room as opposites. She, with her perfect lines. He, with his scribbles. But somehow over the course of days they'd drawn something new together. Something unfinished. But alive. When the taxi arrived the next morning, they stood in the room one last time. She looked around. "Strange," she said. "I thought I'd hate this place." He nodded. "Same." She turned to him. "Think we'll ever meet again?" He shrugged. "Depends on the universe. And hotel software." They laughed. He handed her a no envelope. "Just folded once. Don't read it now," he said. She didn't. In the cab, miles away, she unfolded it. It read, "You brought order to my chaos. I brought color to your gray. If that's not fate, then I don't know what is." There's something strange about a shared space. When you live beside someone, when you breathe the same air, brush your teeth at the same sink, sleep just inches apart. Even if your hearts are miles away, you start to see things. Not just the habits and quirks, but the quiet humanity underneath it all. The small, unnoticed details that only proximity can reveal. That's what began to happen in room 304 after the battles over Pilo. Routines and thermostat settings. The chaos settled into a fragile truce. They weren't friends. Not yet, but they were no longer just mismatched guests either. They were, in a word, present, and it was in the in-between moments, the spaces neither of them planned for, that something unexpected began to grow. It started with the broken shower. Day 5. Morning. She turned the handle, and instead of warm water, the pipe wheezed, gurgled, and sprayed a sharp blast of cold right at her face. She screamed. He rushed in, slipping on the tile, nearly knocking over a rack of towels. She stood there soaked, clutching a towel like a shield, hair dripping over her eyes. He tried not to laugh. He failed. She glared, then broke into laughter herself. "I look like a wet cat," she said. "Correction," he replied. "An angry wet cat that single shared momenta, ridiculous, human, silly, interruption dissolved, a wall that words had never been able to breach." Later that day, the hotel apologized and offered them a free spa voucher for the inconvenience. She hesitated. He raised an eyebrow. "Come on," he said. "A temporary ceasefire in neutral territory." She agreed. They went, and in the quiet hum of the spa, something shifted again. He saw her face without tension, without the shield of sarcasm or routine, just her. Eyes closed, breathing steady, peaceful. She saw him without the noise, just a man with tired eyes, a slow smile, and a vulnerability he didn't show in daylight. They didn't talk much on the walk back, but they didn't need to. That evening, he found her sketchbook on the bed. She hadn't hidden it this time. He didn't open it. Instead, he left a note on top. "Show me when you're ready, not before." She stared at the note for a long time. The next night, she opened it in front of him. Her sketches were delicate, detailed, emotional. Buildings, windows, a woman curled on a bed, looking out at the city, a man laughing with his head tilted back. "That's me," he whispered. She didn't deny it. "Sometimes," she said, It's easier to draw someone than to explain why they matter. He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Just sat beside her, silent, until their shoulders touched. From that point on, the room changed again. It no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like something in between, like the middle pages of a story neither of them had finished writing. One afternoon, he came in limping, twisted his ankle on a curb while chasing a street vendor for a pastry he'd wanted her to try. She laughed at him until she saw the scrape. Then, without a word, she fetched the first aid kit and sat him down. He watched her gently clean the wound, brow furrowed, lips pressed in concentration. "You're good at this," he said. He shrugged. "I like fixing things. Only the ones who want to be fixed." He looked at her, then really looked, and something passed between them that neither of them spoke aloud. That night, they shared a bottle of wine, not because it was romantic, but because it was Tuesday, and the city outside their window pulsed with rain, and the warmth of the glass between their fingers made the silence softer. He told her about his brother, the one he hadn't spoken to in years. She told him about the project she lost, the one that made her doubt everything. He shared the email he'd written but never sent. She shared the blueprint she never pitched. The conversation drifted from laughter to tears and back again, like waves on a restless sea. By midnight, they were sitting on the floor, backs against the bed, shoulder to shoulder. "You know," he said quietly, "if someone told me I'd be sitting here with Ulak Disad, have laughed in their face." She smirked. "Same. But I'm glad," he added. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned her head on his shoulder, and they stayed like that until sleep crept in. No kisses, no grand gestures, just two souls resting against each other, finally quiet in the chaos. On day 7, they went for a walk. Not because they had anywhere to go, but because staying inside felt too heavy. The city was glowing under overcast skies. They walked side by side, sometimes brushing hands, sometimes not. They paused at corners, at flower stalls, at shop windows reflecting their mismatched silhouettes. They didn't talk much, but everything was said in the silences. They stopped at a small cafe. He ordered for both of them correctly. She raised an eyebrow. "You remembered?" He nodded. "I listen." She smiled. "I know." Back in the room, the bed was unmade, their things mixed, his camera beside her notebook, her scarf draped over his backpack, 2 lives entangled. Case. She sat on the windowsill that night, watching the lights flicker across the skyline. He joined. "Did you ever think," she said softly, "that the worst inconvenience of your year would become the best part of it?" He looked at her. "No," he admitted, "but I'm starting to think the universe knew what it was doing." She turned to face him. "What happens after this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. There are moments in life when silence says everything. Not the silence of discomfort or distance, but the kind that settles in between two people like a shared blanket. A quiet so thick and full, it feels alive, buzzing with everything that's never been said, and everything that doesn't need to be. That was the silence that filled room 304 now. It crept in slowly, replacing the tension and noise, replacing even the conversations that once stretched long into the night. No more nervous small talk, no more awkward good nights, just glances that lingered longer than they should, shared looks across the table, and quiet, comfortable pauses that didn't need to be filled. It started on a Thursday morning. She sat by the window, legs curled beneath her, drinking tea. He woke slowly, rubbing sleep from his eyes, watching her in the morning light. She didn't look at him, didn't speak, just sat there, lost in thought. The steam rising gently from her cup. He didn't disturb her. He didn't need to. She knew he was watching, and he knew she didn't mind. Later that day, they went for a walk, not to see anything, just to move, to breathe. They wandered through a small park nearby. The city buzzed around them, but they existed in a bubble. At one point, a little girl ran past, laughing, her balloon drifting just above her head. He smiled. She looked at him and smiled, too. Neither said a word. When they got back to the hotel, he reached into his bag and handed her a small sketch pad he'd found in a bookstore. No note, no announcement, just placed it on her side of the bed and walked away. She looked down at it, ran her fingers across the leather cover, and tucked it under her pillow. That night, they cooked dinner together for the first time. The hotel had a small guest kitchen tucked away behind the lobby, rarely used, but fully stocked. He convinced her to try it. She hesitated at first. She didn't like spontaneity, didn't like stepping outside plans. But something in the way he smiled at her offshore, without pressure, made her say yes. They didn't talk much while they cooked, chopped vegetables, boiled pasta, argued briefly over the right amount of garlic. But there was no tension, just teasing, a quiet rhythm that felt almost domestic. As the pasta boiled, he danced. She rolled her eyes, hiding a grin behind her glass. He extended his hand. She shook her head. He didn't insist, but later, when the music slowed, she reached for his hand on her own. They danced, barefoot, quietly, barely moving. She rested her head on his chest. He rested his chin on her hair. Nothing needed to be said. The next day was cloudy. They stayed in. He edited photos. She drew. At some point, she fell asleep on their bed, pencil still in hand. He watched her. He didn't take a picture. He didn't want to trap the moon, just live inside it. She woke to find a blanket over her and a note on the pillow. You don't have to say anything. I already hear you. She didn't cry, but something inside her softened, opened. That evening, as rain painted patterns on the window, she pulled out her sketch pad and handed it to him, open to the latest page. It was a drawing of the two of them at the kitchen counter, back to back, surrounded by soft light and warm shadows. He was laughing. She was smiling. She had never drawn herself smiling before. He looked up at her. "Why me?" he whispered. She shrugged. "Because you're here." That night, they didn't build the pillow wall. They didn't even mention it. They lay on opposite sides of the bed, facing each other in the dim light. "I've been thinking," he said. She waited. "This wasn't supposed to happen." "No," she said softly. "But I'm glad it did." She reached across the sheet and touched his hand. He wrapped his fingers around hers, and they lay there, hands joined in the quiet, listening to the heartbeat of a connection neither of them had expected, but both were terrified to lose. By day 9, the silence between them had become its own language. He could tell what she was feeling just by the way she closed her sketchbook. She could read his mood by the way he placed his camera on the dresser. When he woke from a nightmare, she was already sitting up, placing a glass of water in his hands. When she was anxious before a virtual meeting, he wrote her a single word on a sticky note. Breathe. They didn't need paragraphs anymore. They spoke in glances, in gestures, in breath. It wasn't grand. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't the kind of love that announces itself in song or storms. It was quiet, strong, real. One evening, he found her by the window again, same cup, same view. He sat beside her. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," he said. She looked at him. "I'm afraid of being known," she whispered. "Fully. Because then someone might leave?" He didn't respond right away. Then, softly, "I'm afraid of never being seen." They looked at each other for a long time. Two people carrying different fears, meeting in the same place. He leaned forward slowly. She didn't move away. Their foreheads touched. They stayed that way for a while. No kiss, just connection. The next day, the hotel sent another email official apology, another free stay voucher, more assurances that this error would never happen again. She read it aloud, laughing. He just watched her. "Are we going to pretend this ends with checkout?" he asked quietly. She stopped laughing. "No," she said, "we're not." They didn't plan what came next. They didn't make promises. But they made space. And sometimes that's enough. On their last morning in room 304, they sat on the edge of the bed, hands loosely intertwined. He turned to her. "Can I take your picture?" She hesitated, then nodded. He didn't ask her to pose. He didn't ask her to smile. He just lifted the camera and captured her as she was quieta, still luminous. The shutter clicked, and in that tiny sound, a moment became permanent. The end came quietly, not with a bang or a fight or some dramatic declaration, but with a single email. Subject line: "Your checkout reminder time, 6 a.m. Message. We hope you've enjoyed your stay at our hotel. Please remember to vacate your room by 11 a.m. tomorrow." One sentence. That's all it took. And suddenly, the room that had once felt too small now felt like it was slipping away. She read the email first, sitting on the edge of the bed, laptop open, hair still damp from the shower. The steam had barely cleared from the mirror when the reality began to settle in. Tomorrow, this would all be over. He was asleep beside her, still peaceful. And for the first time since this entire accidental arrangement had begun, she didn't want to move, didn't want to wake him, didn't want the clock to keep ticking forward. But time doesn't stop for feelings. It just keeps moving. By breakfast, he had read the email to... He didn't say anything at first. Just glanced at her across the table. Her eyes said she knew. His eyes said he wasn't ready. They both kept eating. The silence that day was different. It wasn't the silence of comfort or awkwardness. It was the silence of awareness. Every movement became more meaningful. Every shared look lingered longer. Every accidental brush of hands became a question neither wanted to ask out loud. What happens next? What does this mean? What are we outside this room? Around lunchtime, he started to pack. Not everything, just the small things. Chargers? Travel adapters? She watched him from the chair by the window, sketchbook in her lap, pencil unmoving. She hadn't drawn anything yet. He didn't rush, didn't hum like he normally did. She didn't interrupt. The air was heavier than usual, like the walls of room 304 knew they were about to lose something precious. By mid-afternoon, she began to gather her things too, folded each sweater slowly, placed her sketchbooks neatly into her bag, arranged her toiletries with care, but she left one thing unpacked: her last drawing. She slid it beneath his camera. He found it hours later. It was a sketch of the two of them lying on opposite sides of the bed, hands reaching across the space between them, fingers almost touching. He stared at it for a long time, then quietly placed it into the pocket of his journal. That evening, they didn't turn on any lights. They sat in the dark. No music, no movies, just the glow of the city outside the window. "Do you think this was all just timing?" she asked softly. He turned to her. "No," he said. "I think it was more than that." "Then what was it?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his backpack and pulled out something wrapped in brown paper. She looked at him, confused. "It's not much," he said, "but it reminded me of you." She opened it carefully. It was a small ceramic bird, hand-painted, imperfect, but beautiful. She smiled, touched it gently. "Thank you," she said. "Take it with you," he said, "so you'll know it wasn't just a dream." She stood then, crossed the room, and kissed him. Slow, gentle, honest. Not as a goodbye, but as a maybe. A promise wrapped in uncertainty. When she pulled back, he held her face in his hands and whispered, "I don't want this to be the end." "Neither do I," she replied. But neither of them said what they wanted to say next. Because saying it might have made it real, might have made it final. Instead, they crawled into bed closer than ever before and fell asleep with her head on his chest and his arm around her waist. When the morning came, it felt surreal. The knock at the door, the distant hum of housekeeping carts rolling down the hall, the sunlight filtering in through the curtain cracks. He woke first, watched her sleeping for a while, memorizing the curve of her eyelashes, the way her fingers curled beneath her chin. Then, slowly, carefully, he got up and made coffee. She joined him minutes later. They didn't speak as they sipped from mismatched hotel mugs. They didn't need to. But the time was slipping. The bags were zipped. The room was bare. And Chetka was calling. He picked up his journal, slid the sketch inside. She picked up the ceramic bird, held it close. Then, finally, they stood at the door. Nida wanted to be the first to turn the handle. A vase. So we died. They stepped out together into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind them. But it didn't feel like closure. It felt like something was being stored, preserved, waiting. Downstairs, the front desk offered apologies again. "We're terribly sorry for the inconvenience," the woman said, smiling too brightly. "Of course, your stay will be fully compensated. In fact, we'd like to offer you both a return voucher." He looked at her. She looked at him. He said, "Will you come back here?" She answered, Not unless you're here too. They shared a laugh, but it wasn't funny. It was fragile, hopeful. Outside, the city was buzzing. Cars moved like ants across the street. Pedestrians rushed by, headphones in bags slung over shoulders. Normalcy, but nothing about them felt normal anymore. They stood on the sidewalk, luggage in hand, reality pressing in from every direction. "I have a train," she said. He nodded. "I know. I don't know what this is yet," she continued. "Neither do I," he said, "but I want to find out." She looked at him, and for the first time, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. So she reached into her bag, pulled out a torn sheet of paper, and scribbled something down. Her number, a flight date, a city. "I'll be there," she said. He took it, tucked it into his wallet like something sacred. And just before she turned to go, he grabbed her hand, held it, kissed her knuckles, then let go. She walked away, didn't look back. He stood there, heart pounding, hope blooming and breaking all at once. But he didn't feel sad. He felt full. Because sometimes the best things in life don't come with answers. They come with questions worth chasing. And he knew deep down that the story of room 304 wasn't over. It had only just begun. Time passed. Not dramatically, not loudly. It slipped between weeks like sand through fingers. Quiet, unassuming, but steady. And yet, even as the world moved forward, room 304 lingered, not in their schedules, not on their calendars, but in their bones, in the quiet moments, in every small, everyday thing that reminded them of each other, of a time, a place, a mistake that changed everything. She returned to her routine. The city, the emails, the muted tones of her carefully organized world. She told no one what had happened. How could she? How do you explain falling for someone in a week? Someone who didn't match your checklist, who didn't plan the way you did, who made you laugh when you didn't want to, who slept on the other side of a bed and slowly, wordlessly slipped into your heart. You keep it quiet, you carry it like a secret. And he went back to the road. More cities, more hostels, more cafes with mismatched chairs, and street musicians playing love songs in languages he barely understood. He uploaded videos, told stories, smiled for thumbnails, but every hotel he stayed in after felt wrong. Too temporary. None had her in them. He'd pass by boutique hotels with soft lights and open windows and wonder if maybe she was sitting by one of them, sketching someone else now. Sometimes he would reach for his camera and realize he was already imagining her expression. Weeks became months, and just when memory was beginning to soften into something more manageable, the letter arrived. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten envelope, postmarked 2 cities behind him. He stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside, one sentence. Some places stay with you not because of where they are, but because of who you were when you were there. And beneath it, a photograph. Not one he had taken. When she had. The 2 of them, asleep on the bed in room 300. Forearms tangled, heads close. A mirror in the corner had caught the reflection. She, Mustafa, set a timer. He didn't even know the picture existed, but the moment it captured was real. He folded the letter and placed it in the same journal that held her sketches. Then booked a ticket home, back to the city where they had accidentally collided, back to the hotel, back to the room. It had been renovated again. Fresh paint, new linens, a sleeker headboard, an upgraded thermostat finally. But some things remained. The window still caught the same afternoon light. The shadows still curved the same way across the bed. And the front desk, they remembered him. Oh, you were one of the guests during the renovation mishap, weren't you? We've had a few more of those since, the receptionist joked. Seems like room 304 is always full of surprises. He smiled and requested it again. This time, intentionally, he stepped inside alone, set his bag down, took a slow breath. It smelled like lavender and fresh linen. He sat on the bed, pulled out her letter, and read it again. Then, without knowing why, he opened his laptop, typed the story of room 304. He didn't plan to upload it, not yet. But the words came anyway. Not the polished kind, not the scripted, well-lit kind, but raw ones, real ones. I met someone, he typed, and I think she changed everything. Across the city, she sat in a small studio overlooking a park. Sketchbook open. Tea growing cold. She hadn't planned to send him the letter, but she had. And now she waited. She wouldn't chase him, wouldn't text, wouldn't call, but she had left the door cracked open. Just enough, a week later, she got an alert, new video uploaded, room 304. A story I wasn't supposed to tell. She clicked, and there he was. Hair longer, eyes a little more tired, but this same smile. He told the story gently. Honestly, without naming names, just the way she would have wanted. At the end, he held up the photo and said, I don't know if she's watching, but if she is room 304 wasn't just a room. It was a beginning. And I still want the rest. She didn't cry, but she closed the laptop slowly and picked up her phone. Typed one sentence, come back. He responded with 2 words. Already did. Room 304 isn't just a room anymore. It's a symbol of how love doesn't always knock. Sometimes it barges in when you least expect it. Bags in hand, ready to disrupt everything. Of how 2 people can live worlds apart yet collide in a space just big enough to hold change. Of how sometimes the loudest truths are found in the quietest moments. They stayed in touch after that. At first, carefully, a message every few days, a phone call, a postcard. Then visits, weekends, flights, new cities, until one day they stopped planning returns and started building a life. They never moved in right away. They didn't rush. They didn't need to, because something unshakable had already been built in the space between shared silence. Mismatched toothbrushes and an accidental booking. Years later, they returned to the hotel. Hand in hand, they asked to see the room. The receptionist smiled. It's booked today. They nodded, ready to leave. But just as they turned, she added, "Would you like to leave something behind?" They looked at each other, then reached into their bag and placed a sketch. Framed. It showed two people, backs to the viewer, watching the city together from a window. Beneath it, the words, "Room 304, where everything began." It hangs there still. A quiet reminder that love doesn't always begin with fireworks or flowers or perfect timing. Sometimes it begins with a mistake, and a room neither of them will ever forget. The end. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.